Do you want to know the absolute best archetypes in the game? This video is for you. I've spent almost 300 hours unlocking and mastering every archetype in the game and see them in action so I can get back to the drawing board and finally give you my ultimate archetype tier list in Metaphor Refantazio. Not all archetypes are created equal, and this guide will let you know which archetypes to aim for and save you time from doing the guesswork and enjoy a much more focused game experience. The criteria behind this tier list will define my reason for deciding the rank of each archetypes. Ultimately, the overall value is the deciding factor of the archetype's rank. The actual archetype usage rate is how often I use a certain archetype throughout the game. Archetype skills are how good are the skills of the archetype and how often I inherit its setup skills to other archetypes. While archetype axis is when players will unlock the archetype. But on this list, it plays a minor role because if we consider when or where the archetype will be unlocked, a lot of archetype will suffer, even the best ones. The last one would be that archetypes will be judged per lineage to avoid redundancy, and royal archetypes will have their own slot, as I believe these are separate monsters that people will or will not have access to. Starting with a C tier rank, and the gunner lineage will be the opening archetype on this list. A ranged archetype capable of dealing damage from the back lines and mostly effective in clearing multiple targets with its great AoE skills. The sniper can be a solid backliner depending on your setup. If you love playing with a warrior or physical builds, you will see a lot of value in this archetype lineage, especially early to mid game. But if you are playing magic based archetypes early to mid game, you will not see its value that much. Equipped with single target thrust damage type skills which can inflict different status ailments like poison and AoE skills when using synthesis skills. Also have access to Sukukaja buff that you can utilize when beefing up your dodge tank setups with Heist May. But the deal breaker for me was the smashing salvo skill that lowers the target's defense while dealing great damage in the process, and the mania bullet that inflicts a one-time slash, pierce, and strike weakness to enemies. Pair this with a fully buffed swordmaster and cast the peerless stone cleaver, and you will be seeing huge damage numbers as early as mid-game. I created a build around this combination, so if you are interested, check the description or the card here. But the greatest drawback of this lineage is actually the Dragoon archetype, which I look forward to, and I ended up with great disappointments. I was expecting a fully upgraded version of the sniper, which is phenomenal, and instead, I was given an archetype that deals magic-based attacks. If you look closely, the Dragoon has an horrible magic stat, and I usually equip this on a physical-oriented character, so the Dragoon ruined it all in my experience. The Gunner lineage could be higher on this list if the Dragoon provided value, but for now, it sits on the C tier on this list. Just a bit of a side note, if an archetype was placed on a low rank, it doesn't mean that it's a complete trash. The skill inheritance system in this game can make everything viable, so don't think archetypes at low rank are unusable. The healer lineage, as the name implies, concentrate on healing party members and removing debuffs as well, taking advantage of light elemental attacks as its main damage source. You would call me crazy for putting the healer lineage this low on the list, but just hear me out. In my entire playthrough, I barely used this archetype and I did not feel the necessity to use it as is. The inheriting skill mechanic murdered this archetype lineage, at least in my opinion, and it is likely that you will just want healer lineage skills and nothing more. Skills like Medica, Medical, Revives, and most especially Penpatra, which is a lifesaver in many occasions, especially at endgame since enemy loves to inflict nasty status ailments. Sure, it does have great healing, but because of the Trader Summit and Item Connoisseur passive abilities of the Merchant archetype, which increases or doubles the effectiveness of items, it overshadows the need of the actual healing skills, especially if you are into Merchant and Tycoon setups. If I need healing, how easy for me to just pop Spirit Dust or Great Spirit Dust to heal all the party members with 400 to 600 HP. Anyone can argue that, hey, these stuffs are costly, but if you know how to utilize the Merchant right, money is not an issue in this game. But what if you hate using the Merchant setup for the sake of argument? I use Hulkenberg with a support build Paladin archetype, equipped with Medica or Medical, and these were enough for my healing needs till the end game, especially if you are playing under normal difficulty, which the majority of you will. If you need revives, you can just inherit the revive skills from the healer and slap it onto your main support member. I have plenty of revival medicines and bombs of lives to spend. That's why there's no reason to use this archetype at all, at least in my case, and if I really need more healing at endgame, I much prefer slotting in Summoner as it can damage and can provide heals as well. But for now, the healer lineage will sit on the C tier on this list. The Brawler is a glass cannon type archetype that uses HP to power up its skills, a master of thrust and strike damage, and also offers light elemental attacks. There is no denying how strong the Brawler damage is, especially the lower its health gets, the stronger it becomes. However, I see the Brawler as another archetype that you would only want for its passives. It offers some of the best passives in the game, such as Diligent Discipline, High Voltage, and Battle Master. Since this archetype uses the wielder's HP to power up its attacks, it can be risky, especially at endgame. Sure, the HP loss can be circumvented with the right kind of setups, but do you really want to put yourself in tight situations while there are other better options available? The damage is great as mentioned, but it is one of those archetypes that you can easily skip unless you really like its design and mechanics, and as mentioned previously, any archetype can be viable if you build it properly, but for now, it sits on the higher C tier rank. Starting off the B tier rank, and the Seeker archetype will fill in the first spot. A jack of all trades archetype that can cover a lot of roles with magic based skills, buffs, and physical skills, but as expected, it provides a serviceable performance. In my eyes, the Seeker is more of a mage that excels in dealing with wind damage and a support buffer rather than a physical attacker. The Seeker's value will be seen early to mid-game areas as it will allow the user to have access to heals early and also the Tyrakaja buff. But if you really want healing skills, of course, the healer will provide better value. But later down the line, it can use Adventurer's Curiosity, Vitalgia, and Heat Riser as regular skills, which are all fantastic skills. In late game, one of the big plus of the Soul Hacker key skills can recover MP while dealing great damage in the process, so you will be mitigating MP losses, granting the user more time in dungeons. However, this perk can be disregarded if you know how to effectively farm by using the Tycoon or the Merchant perhaps and gain a lot of money to buy all of the MP potions you need. As early as the mid-game, there are spots where you can farm Magla pills, and in my opinion, at endgame, MP is not an issue anymore if you know what you're doing. The Seeker lineage rank can be higher or lower on your list depending on how much time you spend on this archetype, but at least in my case, I see better options than to settle on it completely, but for now, it sits on the lower B tier rank. The Mage lineage is of course capable of dealing with hard-hitting elemental magic attacks, and you can easily see it shine very early in the game as you will be exploiting elemental weaknesses as soon as you've unlocked it. If you are into magic-based setups, you will be getting more value from this lineage till mid-game. You will start getting immense value from it in the first dungeon by exploiting the magic recovery passive, which replenishes the whole party's MP when you one-shot enemies in the overworld, basically giving you the ability to explore the first and second dungeons limitlessly and start building the foundation of your progress thanks to this archetype. But once you start reaching later parts of mid-game, the wizard's damage will start to fall off very quickly since it has only medium type of element damage and therefore will be outclassed by other archetypes. Another thing is the biggest drawback of this class is unlocking the Mage Elite's archetype versions way late in the game, which is the Elemental Master and Warlock. Although I mentioned that archetype access plays a minor role on this list, however, this needs to be mentioned since you are going to be stuck playing as the wizard for a long time. By the time you unlock the mage's last tier, the summoner is already a better option, at least in my opinion, if you truly want to increase your magic effectiveness in combat. The way I see it is that the greatest value that the mage lineage can offer is its great passives and active skills. Notable skills like Magic Boost, Magic Link, Hyper, especially Arcane Unity that I use a lot in my setups. But I can't help but to feel that the mage is just a stepping stone for magic setup lovers to set them up for the summoner later on, and because of this, the mage will sit on the higher B tier rank. The Knight lineage serves as support archetype that banks on high endurance stat and diverse and tank attacks. It is one of the archetypes that I use a lot, especially in the early game. You will be unlocking this archetype early and you can start to see its value right away. When progressing in the first dungeon, you will be seeing its value, especially when keeping your party members healthy outside of battles by using the first aid skill. But what is insane is it only costs 2 MP per use, and these 2 MP losses can easily be refunded if you take advantage of the magic recovery passive that I just mentioned, which will technically supply you with unlimited MP. Being the first archetype, resistance to slash damage in the early game, if I remember it correctly, is a huge plus. As I progress in my first playthrough, I've rarely removed this archetype in my lineup as diverting tanking attacks is that good. So you'll be seeing consistent value if you follow my setup here. In mid to late game, the Knight became my support buffer and healer at the same time, and this was possible thanks to the Magic Knight and Paladin. Knight has great passives overall, increasing its defense at the start of battle, making it even more sturdier. A notable passive skill is Revitalize 3, which is highly valuable if you want to mitigate MP losses in battle. Follow up with Ironclad Bond and Guard Lore for its tanking needs. On top of that is its ability to heal by itself from status elements after a turn, solidifying its role as a support cleanser. What shines the most is that the Knight's ability that can manipulate enemy turns and depletes them thanks to its counter and magic counter passives. The Knight will have a 15% chance of repelling magic and physical attacks, and in my whole experience, I've seen this proccing a lot, especially on AoE attacks, which late game enemies love to spam. On this tier list, anything that can manipulate turns like add or deplete turns is always broken, at least in my case. I don't see it as a damager type obviously, even though it can deal decent to great thrust damage, and I am not saying it can't be used as a damager since the Dark Knight has a decent offensive kit, but for me, you are better off using the Knight as a support overall. Because of its consistent value throughout the game, it will be sitting on the A tier rank. The Masked Dancer is an archetype that uses archetype masks to inherit signature skill set of a certain archetype. Like for example, if it uses the Samurai mask, it will have access to slash skills, making the Masked Dancer versatile and can provide value in a lot of scenarios, but with a big caveat. Yes, this archetype has so much potential because of the possible skill combination that a player can do. It could be potentially a Seeker archetype on steroids. However, the biggest downfall, at least in my opinion, is you can change the mask in real time or in combat. You can only change the mask outside of battle, but the thing is, if I want to exploit a specific weakness or I'm trying to outsmart a boss, why not use the best archetypes that can do the job, instead of using the Masked Dancer and equipping a mask? One additional downside is that the mask takes away the accessory slot, and given that we have a lot of broken accessories that are game changing, it's a big negative on my end. I'm not saying that it's not usable or totally bad, it's just that it has bad mechanics. When I used this archetype, I did not let it use any mask at all and made the Masked Dancer my support debuffer archetype, which can apply elemental weaknesses to targets, so it will be a great partner of a mage or a summoner archetype. With this setup, you will be exploiting elemental weaknesses consistently, and given that the summoner archetype hits like an absolute truck, the Masked Dancer will make it better. Notable skills are Ruin's Flameflower, which can damage enemies and dispel their buffs, and of course, its phenomenal Masquerade Charge, which increases physical attack a lot. Correct me if I'm wrong, this skill is the highest attack buffing skill in the game, useful for burst setups like empowering physical warrior builds. The Royal Masked Dancer is of course a direct upgrade of its regular versions, adding the Noble Dancer Soul passive skill, which provides a lot of value if you build it as a magic damager. The turn icon refund will allow you to nuke trash mobs, and I can totally see that it will work great in a lot of scenarios, for example, one-shooting the secret bosses in this game, but these are niche setups. As mentioned, it can be a great partner for the Royal Summoner, and it can even be a support archetype if you want to. If the Masked Dancer in general can change its mask during the fight, it could be so much higher on this list, but for now, it sits on the A tier. This is where the list goes spicier, and coming in hot is the Faker lineage. An archetype lineage specializes in debuffing enemies, which is valuable in a lot of setups. Once I unlocked it, I have never played a setup without any debuffing skills on it. Although it may take a while to unlock the Trickster archetype, which is its elite version, the Faker's single target debuffs is more than enough to be high on this list. It can even provide more value when the Trickster is unlocked, granting us access with a Vidyarta skill, which can decrease the enemy's attack and defense by 2 ranks, and that's a lot. Another notable skill such as the iconic Debilitate, which can lower down attack, defense, hit, and evasion all in one. Even if the actual archetype is not being used, you will still find yourself inheriting its debuffing skills from other archetypes, continuing to provide value. But the main downside of this archetype is it does have 0 attacking skills, especially when it comes to Faker. But since we can make sick combos by inheriting skills, there's a workaround for this. I prefer Heist May using a Thief lineage, but I also tend to run Heist May with a Faker or Trickster archetype, equipped with a Gold Attack or Gold Rush attack for the merchant Merchant lineage and play with the Faker's Roguery combo. With a good RNG, you can manipulate your turn icons and start melting your targets as you will be creating a lot. This is just one example of great things you can do with the Faker's Roguery. On top of that, the Miracle Circ Synthesis ability of the Trickster can provide a lot of value in 0 MP cost farming setups in the late game, which is a huge plus especially if you are stuck. I showcased it in a farming guide lately, so check the description if you want to check it out. This archetype is simply valuable in every kind of setup, so it sits on the mid A tier rank. The Summoner is a master of hard-hitting elemental attacks and a direct upgrade of the Mage lineage. This archetype is miles ahead compared to the Mage, with a wide of coverage of elemental attacks with additional effects such as lowering enemy defense or applying burn or poison elements on top of the damage. It is such a good archetype for magic setup lovers and also has a diverse skills that can cover physical AoE attacks and single targets. The Devil Summoner can even unlock more good elemental skills for the user to take advantage of. No question that the Summoner lineage is fantastic, however, its main drawback is it will take so much time to be unlocked and be fully built, as it may take a while for a player to fully craft all of the talismans. Note as well that the other archetypes will not be able to inherit the skills of the Summoner since these are exclusive ones, but you can inherit or add skills on the Summoner to make it even more great. As I mentioned beforehand, if you really love magic spells, use the Mage while you are building the Summoner. And then once the Summoner has been built, inherit the Mage's great passives to the Summoner and you will have a great time. But aside from that, I can think of any downsides and it will rightfully sit in the mid-tier section of the A-tier rank. The Warrior lineage is a master of slash attacks and has a concentrated set of skills. This archetype was made to do one thing, and it is to annihilate its enemies with hard-hitting concentrated physical attacks or clear trash mobs with AoE attacks. If I'm biased on this list, this lineage will be on the S tier. Come on man, Samurai archetype, you know the drill. But I'm taking this objectively and kidding aside, the Warrior lineage will be unlocked super early and will provide consistent value throughout the game. If that's not enough, its overall passives offer a lot of value to the table. Passive skills such as Heat Up, Slash Boost, Martial Lore, Regenerate 3, and 30 Stance, which halves incoming damage but cannot dodge. You will find yourself inheriting most of these passives in other setups most of the time. The main strength of this lineage comes from its synthesis abilities. Very high damaging physical synthesis abilities that can generate turn icons when killing an enemy, which makes it even more broken. But the banger is the Peerless Stone Cleaver, a single target skill that can burst down even bosses because of its insane damage. I would like to remind you that as early as the first dungeon, players can build a mono warrior setup, so the warrior will be laying waste right off the bat. Unlocking the Samurai will make this class even more versatile by adding electric and wind AoE attacks, but the most insane part is reducing the turn cost of the Peerless Stone Cleaver by 1. The Warrior lineage is so good for physical party build lovers and they will not be disappointed. Offering so much value on the table, let it sit on the higher A tier section. If the Warrior lineage is insane, the Berserker lineage in general is broken as hell. Another physical-oriented archetype that has access to slash, thrust, and strike damage types. Also built to withstand physical attacks by being resistant to all physical damage types. Being sturdy while being versatile by having access to AoE physical attacks and punishing single targets like bosses is beyond insane. Key offensive skills can greatly damage enemies and debuff them in the process. Debuffs such as lowering defense and dispelling buffs. The Destroyer can even make things worse by adding elemental damage types and insane passive skills such as Health Vessel that can easily skyrocket the user's HP and short range boost that adds more damage. But that is not all. The greatest feat of this archetype is it can ignore resistances, so if a certain enemy has annoying resistance, it will be destroyed still. And remember that you can easily apply weakness to strike damage, which is nuts. The only downside of this archetype is, my goodness, you will be unlocking it way late in the game. And please Atlas, this trend needs to be changed. But again, since archetype access plays a little role on this list, it outshines the warrior and will sit on the higher A tier section. The Thief lineage concentrate on providing dark physical damage types to the table while banking on high agility stats to dodge enemy attacks. I bet you did not see this coming, but I do have a very good reason why this lineage is so high up on the list. I mostly don't care about the majority of its physical attacks unless I need to exploit dark damage, but it rarely happens. I use Heist May as my main debuffer and he rarely attacks, but it's not his only role. Aside from stealing great weapons that I can use to power up my party, he's my dodge tank. tanker. And oh my goodness, he is godly with his setup. The thief and assassin can dodge attacks with the help of evasion buffs, but it's not that consistent, so the value of this archetype lineage is not that obvious from early to mid game. But when the late game comes, Heismay will be a dodge god and no one can stop him. Enemies at late game can generate a lot of turn icons, and sometimes it can be more than 6 turn icons, which is nasty. But I use the Dodger Ring to completely deplete enemy turn icons when Heismay dodge an attack. Pair this accessory with a ninja, and its third eye passive will synergize extremely well with this accessory. Plus, the agility lure will make him start with 2 stacks of evasion if you equip something like the hair breeches, or increase overall evasion by slotting in Serene Headband. Not to mention, the Heismay Ninja combo already gives a fat stat of agility, but that's not all. Slot in Knight's Proclamation on him to divert all of the enemy attacks, and enemies visually look like clowns. Insane damage numbers are great, but I always see repelling attacks and absolute enemy turn icon erasers are such an overpowered mechanics in this game, rendering enemies powerless, and being able to abuse it with a Thief lineage is absolutely broken, and because of this, the Thief lineage will be the top archetype of the A tier rank. But before we move on to the best of the best archetypes in the game, consider subscribing to the channel if you are getting value out of this video. Liking the video and engaging in the comments helps me a lot. Thank you for your support. It is time to decide the best of the best archetypes in the game, and coming in hot and first in the S tier section is the Commander lineage, the first non-royal archetype who made it in the S tier rank and beyond. This lineage focuses on buffing the entire party with all kinds of buffs and occasionally attack if needed. The value that it adds to the table is clear to see, and not only you will be unlocking this archetype fairly early in the game, but you can take advantage of this lineage a lot until late game. The Shelter Formation and Formation of Vigor are my most used buffs, and I don't run any kind of party builds without these 2 skills. Formation of Vigor adds 2 stacks of attack buff, while Shelter Formation for defense to the entire party. If you don't find it broken, the Warlord will justify its usefulness with its ultimate synthesis skill, the Dynas Formation, which is basically a heat riser that applies to all of your party members, adding 3 stacks of attack, defense, hit, and evasion in the process. How broken is that? I don't use it as an attacker though, since in my opinion, it's not made for that. But just in case you need offensive skills, it can deal decent to great elemental damage, can also apply elemental weaknesses. Adding icing on the cake is its main equipment can provide useful effects such as preventing physical status ailments or applying a party-wide attack buff when the battle starts, with great passives such as front and back boost. Truly a broken archetype worthy of its S tier rank. If you love the Summoner, there is no reason not to be amazed at the Royal Summoner. Of course, it's a direct upgrade from the regular lineage in every way. Still works like its regular version, but this time, its elements are more diverse and can still debuff or apply status elements on enemies. Fire, electric, light, dark, and ice, you name it. While also being versatile in dealing with single or multiple targets. The ultimate mage indeed. It can inflict almighty and strike damage via synthesis abilities as well. What's even more broken is that Yufa's final weapon reduces synthesis abilities turn cost by 1. Being able to damage and apply debuffs by summoning Fury is really something. The Royal Summoner can even be your full-time healer and cleanser while giving you the ability to revive all of your allies. What a great archetype, the pinnacle of magic in the game, and sits on the S tier rank. The Royal Knights is Hulkenberg's final archetype and has all the bells and whistles of the regular Knights lineage, a direct upgrade compared to the previous ones. Treat it as a combination of all of the Knight archetypes. But the major advantage that it has is the Holy Knight's Proclamation skill, which can not only divert and tank attacks, but let Hulkenberg guard in the process, making her even more tankier. But what makes this skill broken is that the Noble Knight's Soul passive, which refunds 1 turn icon after using the Holy Knight's Proclamation. How broken is that? Since you will be tanking attacks, especially AoE physical and elemental attacks, and enemy loves to spam this at late game, the Omni Counter passive will give you the chance to repel all kinds of attacks except almighty damage by 15%. Remember, repelling attacks reduces turn icons, so this is a huge plus. The Royal Knight can be your support, a debuffer, and can occasionally attack and deal decent thrust damage thanks to the 30% thrust damage passive. But want to make the Royal Knight even more broken? Equip Hulkenberg with Utilitarian Manual and slot in Magic Link and Magic Font passives. In this way, the Royal Knight's ultimate guard, which nullifies all attacks for a single turn except almighty damage, will be spammable. And basically, your party member will be immortal in the succeeding turns. What a broken archetype, worthy to sit in the S tier rank. INB strolled big time for having the Royal Warrior. It is a culmination of the Great Warrior lineage and takes its capabilities to different heights. The pinnacle of slash damage and has all the bells and whistles of the samurai minus the elemental attacks which you can easily ignore. It has absolutely fantastic skill to take advantage of, like the Vorpal Blade, which is now a regular skill, and our iconic Brave Blade, which a high chance of dealing critical hits. Another legendary skill from the Atlas universe is the Hasatobi skill, which can annihilate trash mobs completely. Its passive is an absolute monster, adding a 30% increase to slash damage. If that is not enough, adding icing on the cake is that its final weapon further increases this archetype's slash damage, so you will be seeing tons of damage in the process. If the samurai is already hitting 5-digit damage numbers, just imagine what a Royal Warrior can do. But what is really insane is that the Noble Warrior Soul passive brings the Royal Warrior to XP, allowing it now to use turn icons when it defeats an enemy. Like for example, I'm spamming the Peerless Stone Cleaver in this clip, and look how I can use its most powerful synthesis skill every turn. This setup even doesn't have the Utilitarian Manual equipped. What an insane archetype, and surely if you want power, the Royal Warrior will not disappoint in every way. And because of this, it sits on the higher tier section. We all know by now how broken the High Speed Dodge Tank combo equipped with a Dodger Ring is. But what if I tell you that the Royal Archetype can do it all even without the ring? The Royal Thief is the pinnacle of the Thief lineage, adding 2 new broken passes, which is the Haste Lore that adds 2 stacks of Tsukukaja buff when the battle starts, and the Noble Thief Soul inherits the Dodger Ring's effect. Replace the Dodger Ring with any broken accessory of your choice, while still giving you the ability to completely delete enemy turns no matter how many turns the enemy generated. Don't forget that you will still have the Agility Lore, and since you already have 2 stacks of Tsukukaja buff available, inheriting the Agility Lore will make it 3 stacks at the start of battle. Completely optional, but you do have this option. I cannot stress how broken this archetype is, and this is the reason why Royal Thief managed to secure the top S tier spot on this list. But this list is not even complete yet. The next set of archetypes is considered the Big 3, or the archetype that reaches the God tier status. If you think you've seen it all, the next set of archetypes is beyond measure. The Royal Berserker is beyond overpowered, having all of the best abilities of its predecessors. If you think the Destroyer is more than enough, the Royal Berserker even raised the bar with its newly added basic skill, the Systematic Destruction. Strike damaging skill that hits like an absolute freight train and ignores resistance. But what is even more insane is the highly regarded synthesis ability, the Wanton Destruction, is now a regular skill, so you can spam and apply strike weakness. This archetype can even debuff multiple targets by lowering their attack and defense by 2 ranks, which is totally out of this world. The Royal Berserker still has access to its AoE attacks via synthesis abilities, with passive skills of plus 30% strike damage and Noble Berserker Souls, which allow the user to consume no turn icons if Basilio deals critical hits. At this point, the Royal Berserker can solo and tank some of the bosses, which just shows how broken it is, worthy of the S+ tier rank. And of course, the last 2 archetypes are about to be revealed, and the second strongest archetype in the game is no other than the Prince, the ultimate archetype that is purposely made broken by the devs to embody the protagonist's power, and this is a trend in Atlus games. It can buff its attack, defense, hit, and evasion by 3 ranks by casting the Hero's Proving, but the main banger is the Hero's Cry, an absolute broken skill that generates a whopping 4 turn icons, enough to burst down even the hardest bosses if used properly. But the Prince's greatest feat is being the ultimate glue unit. Regardless of the archetype composition, your RD party members will have access to their synthesis abilities as long as the Prince is present. Just imagine the composition or sick combos that you can do with this. It has access to different elemental attacks, but its almighty skills are the bangers, and will have a bonus damage against humans. So if you want to nuke enemies using hard-hitting almighty damage, the Prince does not disappoint. To top it all off, the Prince is resistant to all types of attacks aside from almighty damage. Truly an amazing leader archetype and one of the strongest archetype in this lineup or in the entire game. But what if I tell you that even the prince is so broken, the next archetype is even miles ahead? The strongest archetype in Metaphor Refantazio is the Tycoon, which belongs to the merchant lineage. You may be surprised right now, and I have so many reasons why the merchant lineage or the Tycoon is the top 1 archetype on this list. I firmly believe that the merchant lineage is the most disgusting or busted archetype if you know how to utilize its capabilities. It is so disgustingly strong all throughout the game, and you will be unlocking it as early as finishing the second optional dungeon in the game. The moment that you use the mono merchant setup, you do have an option to call it a day and never change your lineup like ever. That is until the Tycoon has been unlocked. Its ultimate skills, which are the gold attack and gold rush, use money to power its attacks, meaning that MP will no longer be an issue in the game. Still not enough for you? Let me show you how powerful gold attacks are. There are certain abacus that increases the cost of money in exchange of increasing its attacks. Both gold attacks have high critical hit rate, so you will be scoring critical hits most of the time and generate additional turn icons. Not to mention, these skills deal almighty damage, so you will never think about resistance ever. But what if you ran out of money? I heard you asking. This archetype will exponentially increase your money gains, and as early as a 3rd dungeon, you can already earn millions if you know how to farm effectively, making earning cash in this game not really an issue or trivial. Now if you are using a mono Tycoon setup at late game, you can actually farm the strongest abacus in the game, which is the Fortune God's abacus in the final dungeon, and make all of your party members a powerhouse. Plus the insane passive it provides, the Trader Summit and Item Connoisseur eliminates the need for healers as it increases or even doubles item effectiveness as I mentioned. A critical trade which doubles the chances of critical hit rate, and almighty boost increases its damage further. With the right setup, you will be hitting 40 to 55k easily without any kind of complicated setup per attack. If you want to see how this build works, I made specific guides for both, link in the description. On top of everything that I just mentioned, Synthesis abilities can remove all of enemy buffs and can even buff a single party member's attack and defense by 3 ranks. The only downside of this archetype is it does make the game trivial and boring. I much prefer the normal setup since in my opinion, those are much more fun to play, but the merchant lineage is for people who love to breeze the content and hate to use complicated setups. There was one playthrough where I have beaten all of the hardest challenges without a hassle, including the hardest bosses in the game. If you simply hate using the mono merchant and Tycoon setups, the Prince is the easy top 1 archetype for you, just like in my personal case. The amount of value that the merchant lineage provides is simply unbelievable. Makes me think that the devs are heavily biased on this class and makes me question why it is so broken and unbalanced in so many ways. Indeed, capitalism is the core of this game. I'm sure a lot of you will have your own list or take about these archetypes. However, if you are wondering what are the best farming spots in the game, or you just started playing the game and want to know the best beginner tips, click on these videos and I will catch you on the next one.